Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the More Sugar Podcast. My name is Amanda Callender, and this is our second episode of Soul Sessions, dealing with the loss of a mother. I have my friend here, Tonya Walley, my AP. Me and Tanya's been friends for a while, a long time, and I would say that she came into my life by the grace of God. And I want to tell a quick story before I allow her to introduce herself and talk about her mom. We were fasting. Our church was doing the church fast. The first Daniel fast we did, it was January of 2015. And it was only people knew was our close circle that we were trying to conceive Jax at the time. And our church assigned us accountability partners. So that's where the term AP comes from. And she was assigned my accountability partner. And basically, accountability partner makes sure that you're not eating those glazed donuts. You're sticking to the diet. If you struggle as a person, it's like an AA person. You call them up. Look, I'm struggling today. I need some words of encouragement, somebody to pray with. And for me, I was blessed that I didn't know. Well, I knew, but Tanya is a PK. So she would call me some mornings and ask. She went way beyond accountability partner for me. She would call me some mornings and say, "How you doing?" I'm saying, "Not so good." And she has a high stress, high powered job. And she would say, "Give me a second, and I'll call you back." And she'll call me back, and she'll pray for me. And so I told her at the time, that's what I do with all my friends. I tell them how much I love them, how much they mean to me, how much they get me through. And so that's where AP comes from. She's been my accountability partner for years. I'm like a mentor, a big sister to me. And one last thing I want to say, there's a picture floating around the internet of when Jax was born, and my wife is, she's behind the scenes. Okay. She's like the producer behind the scenes. There's a picture floating around the internet when Jax was born, and I'm just there in the labor and in the room, and I'm drinking champagne. And across from me, Tanya bought me that bottle of champagne, and she pulled her laptop from wherever and worked that day I had Jax from my delivery room. That's who I'm talking to. That's my sister. So, Tonya Walley, take it away.
Oh, that's thank you so much. But before I do any introductions, which I'm not gonna really do an introduction, Tonya Walley, most people know me.
Yes, they do.
But I also have a story about our time during the Daniel fast that I probably never shared with you, but I'll share it because one of the things I've also learned is the word vulnerability. And what the fast meant for me was really a time for me to repurpose myself, reinvent myself. But the big story here for me during that fast was while you were assigned to me, I was assigned to you. And that was the first time in, I'd say, my adult life that I'd gone 30 days without a drink.
Ooh.
Yeah. So when you talk about grief, and I know we'll get into it and we'll unpack some of it, my adult life has been filled with adult beverages trying to mask that grief. And for the first time, so that Daniel fast 2015 was particularly hard or difficult because it really forced me into a space where I'd never been, in a space where I was very uncomfortable to give up drinking for an entire month. And it was hard.
It was rough. It was, we came out battered and bruised, but look at us now. Look at all these years later. Here we are.
That's right. That's right.
Still
So, again, Tonya Walley here. I adore Amanda. As Amanda has shared, we have a friendship that I can't even say the beginning piece of it, which is good because it doesn't matter when it began. What matters to me is where it's at and where it's going. So that's the thing that matters. And I love you and I adore you. And, I don't want to get us off course, but I want to do something that I haven't done. And that is applaud you for your book.
Thank you.
There was some things about you in the book that I didn't know. And
my cousin Tracy said the same thing, and she's my cousin.
Yeah, so I walked away saying, well, Tanya, that's your friend. Why don't you know this? And for a moment, I felt guilt around our friendship. And then I said, you know what, Tanya, give yourself grace, right? Give yourself grace. And that's important. But there were so many things in that book that I didn't know about you. But the thing that I loved about the book, outside of it being your story, is just your vulnerability and your willingness to tell your story. Because what I've discovered is our responsibility is to tell our stories, and these things that happen to us in life, they're by design. And I couldn't always say that. Like, you go back 30 plus years, mother dying, that ain't no damn design.
Yeah.
That was designed to kill me, and it didn't.
Yeah. And you think
But what I realize is that these stories help other people overcome, and they are designed to help inspire people. So your book was very inspirational and very well done. So
thank you.
very well done.
Thank you. And the response, you know, is, you know how when God tell you to do something, and my first thing is we're thinkers. I'm like, how am I gonna get that done? And it perplexed me, but he just kept saying, do it. So I'm like, here I am with this podcast, and the response that I got was so overwhelming with just Tamisha, and everybody is so excited. I'm like, okay, God, here I go. So we'll see where God takes us.
That's right. And by the way, if you haven't purchased the book, better get you some sugar in your grits. Yes, shameless plug.
That book, I read it, and I discover new things that I wrote. I'm like, you said that?
Mm-hmm.
And so many people still come up to me like, I read your book. I'm just here to, I still can't believe that I did it. But it's so freeing.
Yes.
And my son picked up the book one day. I think I talked about it. He picked up the book on one day driving home from school, when he can read. And I was nervous at first. And I'm like, well, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't write it to be afraid of what he was going to know. It was
right.
to free him and to create a legacy for him.
That's exactly right. So listen, I'm supposed to be telling you about my mother, particularly when she died. So my mother left this earthly realm on December 12th, 1989.
Wow.
I was 18 years old. And of course, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was she's in Long Branch, New Jersey, Monmouth Medical Center, and she'd fought cancer twice. So she passed away of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Okay.
Hodgkin's disease, it's cancer of the lymph nodes. And I was like, what the heck is that? But anyway, and she'd had it when I was in the 8th grade and went through a series of chemotherapy, radiation, etc. Was in remission, and then it came back. I was in my first year of college. So when my first foray of college, as you know, Amanda, I'm a career student, but my first foray in college was at Stevens Institute of Tech. And I recall the day again so vividly. I was in the ICU waiting room studying for a chemistry exam. And the doctors, at this time I'm 18, and I'm like, because I got a lot of faith. I'm like, well, my mother, she's going to be fine. Yes. But the doctor said, we're not sure this time. And I still didn't believe him. I said, well, I don't know. They don't know what they're talking about, because the God I serve is never going to take my mother away from me. Well, not this young.
So let me stop you. So you said it was in remission in 8th grade.
Yes.
And it came back.
Yes.
So what did that do to you? Like, it was like God giving you something and snatching it back?
After it got snatched back the second time, yeah, okay. Absolutely. Because after she, I say, beat cancer the first time, we were celebrating. Remember, we're people of faith, so we'd go to church and we'd testimonies, and God healed her, and I still believe that.
Right.
So then it came back, and it was this moment of, well, what do you mean it's back? And she told us, she sat us down. She says, I have cancer again, and she said, I'm going to go through the treatment again. And then I don't know where it turned left, but somehow she wound up in the hospital towards the end. And crazy enough, at some point, I don't know if it was her first bout or her second bout, I had gone to the emergency room because I had pneumonia. I don't even know which round it was. But this particular day, I'm in the waiting room and studying for this chemistry exam, because I was in my first semester at Stevens. And I was with Aisha, so my friend Aisha, and she said, let's go to the caf, let's go get a beverage or get something to eat. And we're walking down the corridor, and I heard this code. It says, code blue to ICU. And something just went through my entire body. I knew it was her, but I wouldn't turn back around. I said, let's just go, let's get our food. So we go, and we come back, and we go to the waiting room, and then the doctors came in. and they said, "We're sorry, she's gone." And those words still reverberate through my body even today. And it's like the worst gut punch of your life, where
Hmm.
you can't breathe. You ever been punched? I don't know if you've ever been punched, because you
I
kind of
haven't,
thorough.
but I felt like an elephant was standing on my
Yeah,
chest and
and you
just
try to catch your
gasping for
breath and you're
air.
breathing,
Yes,
you're trying to breathe, and I felt like
yes.
I couldn't breathe, and it was the worst
Hmm.
event of my life to date. And I'm in my early 50s now.
And I knew it was the worst event of your life. Like you said, like sometimes there was guilt when you commented on the post with Tamisha and you said the exact time it's been since your mom passed away. And I always say, oh, man, I don't know if it's me blocking out grief, but when you said the exact years and down to the month, I said, wow,
Yes,
that means that that feeling is still so fresh.
it is.
And
It is.
that's the misconception that people have about grief, that you get over it. And
Yeah.
you just don't. So from that I'm gonna ask you, what has grief taught you about yourself?
Whew. Wow. Well, I tell you, so now I can look back and clearly see that I am resilient, and I get that resilience I get it from my mama, I'll say. But what I've also discovered about myself is that I was stuck in grief for the majority of my adult life.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't grieve. I didn't know how to grieve. I'm 18, and I'd lost my grandparents, but that's a different type of grief, between grandparents and parents. But I never grieved for my mother at that point. And what happened for me is, I also discovered about myself is that I didn't grieve anything, whether it was
Mm.
the loss of a job, the
Yes.
loss of a relationship. So I just went through life just moving on, carrying that grief with me and never grieving anything. Um,
Yes.
and that I think that's the biggest thing that I learned about myself, is now I know how to grieve and how to let go and go through those stages of grief. And I love the way you clearly articulated it in the book, The 5 Stages. And I read that and I said, oh, which stages have you been in? Obviously, I've been in all five of them,
Right.
but where did you get stuck? So I
Yes.
got stuck for many, many years in the anger. And then at some point, and I'd say probably late 40s, I decided to go back to therapy, because I've had a
Right.
series of therapists. And my therapist said, you are not grief. You are not your pain. And what I had to do is just really, really, really feel the pain and feel the grief.
Yes.
And that was hard, and do it
Yes.
without alcohol. But the other thing, in not grieving anything, I have had a lot of collateral damage throughout my years, right?
Yes.
So being in relationships with people, not loving them because I'm afraid to love fully, because I
You're
know
gonna
what this
lose
pain
something.
feels like
Yes.
to lose, and the abandonment issues. And I don't look back with this feeling of, oh, I missed out on life. I didn't, because I'm having an amazing life. But I look back and I say, wow, Tanya, you have gone through life missing out on the real beauty of deep love, because you would not allow yourself to love. And you really went through life and loving halfway or a quarter
Mm.
of the way, because you were afraid to fully get in there and love, because of the fear of losing and the pain that goes along with losing.
So that kind of like just washes into my second question, because clearly you still have bad days. Like, it's my question was, some people think time heals grief and makes it easier, but do you still have bad days? But clearly,
Oh God,
you
yes.
every you still we all still have bad days, and I wanted to ask you that because you always are this pillar of strength,
Hmm.
aesthetically, right?
Right.
And people never know. Like, I always tell people, I appear to have it together, but I cry in the shower in the morning just to cleanse my body of whatever the day has held. And so clearly, you still have. It's okay to say that you still have bad days, right?
It's more than okay, because that is part of the true healing, and that is part of the true experience. Because I'd say the only thing that heals grief, in my opinion, is feeling it and processing it and allowing those feelings to course through your body. And that's not easy. So I say it as if it's easy. It's not easy. And I still have those days. In fact, I'm feeling a little
Yeah, I
weepy
was
right
feeling a little
now.
misty eyed myself
Yeah, I'm feeling a little weepy now.
when you was explaining it to me, the hospital room scene, and that's what it's about, grief. Like, you could watch. I was saying to Tamisha, I was watching Princess Diana's funeral, and I'm bawling,
Hmm.
crying. I'm like, I'm not crying for Princess Diana. I'm thinking about my mom's funeral. And then
Right.
when you was just telling me your story, it's like, I'm crying for you as my friend and that feeling, but I also, that's how my dad died. And I was in the ICU waiting room, and it always brings back these emotions that you think that you've pushed down to
Right.
survive. When we don't have to push them down to survive, we have to feel them to survive. And I
That's the
think
point.
that's what most people are operating on. They're operating on just pushing the feelings to the side until they can't go no more, until grief, the weight just breaks them down, and they can't understand why they're having this nervous breakdown. That's just
Yeah.
compounded grief exposing itself.
But you know what? I think we have to understand, and I finally get it, that we have, or maybe not everybody, but I'll talk about myself. There is trauma that has existed in our lives, whether it's the loss of a mother, a sibling. And if we don't reconcile it, we're going to just carry it everywhere we go anyway. So now when I think about my mom, I still get weepy. I mean, teary eyed, because I just miss her. You know, there's no other way to
Of
say it. I
course.
just miss her. I miss, and I didn't bring my tissue, and I probably need it, but I miss going through my adult life without that pillar of strength. So I've had to be, I'm now that pillar of strength, but I miss her advice, her love, her warmth, her wisdom. So I'd say I don't necessarily call them bad days anymore. I call them feeling days, because
Okay.
I'm feeling, right? And
I
my
like to write
last,
stuff down when I write
yeah,
my things in.
my last feeling day was on her anniversary, the 33rd anniversary, which was December 12th. And something just triggered me. It was probably a post from maybe my niece or my sister. And I just walked in the kitchen and I just started crying. And I said, wow, Tonya, don't expect to ever not cry. It's okay. Because I think I go through every year thinking that, oh, this year I'm not going to cry. And it's okay to cry. And I've now said to myself, don't expect it. Just accept, right? That fifth part of grieving, the acceptance piece. I can say I'm finally there, but it doesn't mean that I don't get triggered. And there's a memory of her that will just pop in my mind. And then I get this sadness. So I still, every now and then, carry sadness. And I just have to now accept that this will be with me for the rest of my life. And that's
That's the
just what it
acceptance
is.
part
That is
of
it.
the final
That
stages.
is it. There's
I
no
think,
magic potion. There's no magic
yeah.
wand. Because guess what? It's proof that you have the capacity to love so deep also.
I also think that I'm Groundhog's Day. I think I get stuck in the grievance cycles. I repeat them.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'm angry
Yeah.
all over again, and sometimes I'm in denial. Like, I can't believe this shit. Like, why am I here? Why do I feel this way? And then there's
Right.
the part of me that wants to be strong, and I'm angry that I feel like I'm stuck. But now that you put it, it's not stuck. It's just me feeling the feelings,
Yeah.
which
I'm
I
having a
hate.
feeling day.
Which I'm probably with 80% of the world. I hate to feel those feelings because it takes so much out of you. You could be having an amazing day, and then the song come on the radio, and then next thing you know, you're going down 95 boo-hooing.
Yes.
And
Or in your kitchen or in the
yeah,
shower,
in
like
the
you said.
kitchen, yeah, and
Yeah.
people are like, "Why? Don't worry, why I'm crying at the light.
Don't you
Just
worry about it. Just let me cry.
right,
You mind your
just
business.
right. Go watch your life." Oh,
Go figure out your trauma
right,
responses.
exactly. If everyone was figuring out their trauma responses, we'd be a bunch of people crying at the light. But
Yes.
we withhold things. So, what is one thing you would want your kids to know about your mom?
Oh God, one thing. Whew. So this is going to be the speed dating round because I can't do one thing.
Okay.
Selfless, kind, loving, servant leader, and she instilled every single one of those traits into her daughter.
So you are who you are. They get to know you are who you are because of her.
Yes, absolutely. You know, quickly, I know we're going to come up on time, but
No,
when
we
I
good.
started working at the food bank, people didn't understand that. They say, "Well, why are you going to work at the food bank?" I said, "You all don't know. This is my give back to a community that gave to my family. But the bigger story was my mother and her selflessness. So when she was diagnosed with cancer the second time, she stopped working. My dad, who was a blue collar worker, I got my work ethic from him, by the way. We were a family of 7 trying to make ends meet. And my mother would go to the food bank to get food for us. But because she was such a selfless, kind servant leader, she would take that same food and give it to some of her friends that didn't have food. And I'm like, where they do that?
Right.
Where they do that? So this was my opportunity to give back to the community that fed us.
Wow. So that's like a full circle moment. You was a recipient of the food bank, and then you ended up like, don't be modest, running the food bank.
I was a recipient, then I was running it, and then I was the board chair for the food bank.
Come on with the accolades.
But that's
Don't be
God. That's
modest.
God,
That's
though.
God. Look,
That's
yeah,
God.
that's God. Sometimes. Okay, wait. Okay, let me back up. How different do you think your life would be if she was still here?
Well, here's the thing. I think we were an ultra religious family. And when I say religious, it was holiness, Pentecostal, no pants, no nothing.
Right.
So I
It
often
was tough.
wonder, yeah, it was pretty tough. I often wonder, and sometimes there's this tug of war in my head because I wonder if I would be gay still. I do wonder because my mother she just wasn't having it.
I wonder about
I
my
saw my
grandmother.
brother come out and he had a hard time. So I wonder if I would have been in the closet or if I would have hid my authentic self. Because here's the thing, I am gay and this is not my choice. It is who I am. But I
Right.
wonder for my mother, would I've gone the other way? And then my mother always had this dream that I was going to be a doctor. So I wonder if maybe I'd be a heterosexual
Dr.
doctor.
Wilder. I think doctor, but I don't think heterosexual. I think that I used to think that about my grandmother, and I would mull it over to the point of sadness because I love my life,
Hmm.
and I think that with the changing in times, and that maybe this is my prayer that the love that they have for us would have overpowered what their expectation was because we don't love God any less.
That's right. That's right.
So that is my prayer that if the sexuality part would not have made her love me any less, or because I see some people go through it like they're totally disconnected from their
Hmm.
families, and that's just heartbreaking. I don't have that problem. Maybe I'm like, maybe because your grandmother ain't here, but
Right.
I just that's just a fantasy of mine that she's here and everything is still amazing.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So,
Sometimes with grief and loss, our faith wavers. How have you kept your faith, and how has your faith kept you?
well,
Because in the book, I was like, I was beefing with God hard.
yeah, I beefed with God for many years, and
Okay,
say I lost faith for a very long time. From the moment she died, I immediately left the walls of the church. The church is always in me, right? Or the teachings and my belief in my relationship with God. But I abandoned the relationship with God because you'll know that I don't believe church is just inside the walls. I believe the ministry is actually outside of the church. But I was mad at God. I said, God, how could you take this woman who is so amazing? She's a great mother. I mean, I had a great mother. I said, how could you do this? So I lost faith, but it's weird because now I look back and I said he had to, because just like I said to you earlier, our stories are meant to be told and our
right.
journeys are meant to be shared. And God said, or the universe said, hey, you're going to be the person that's going to help other people. So it's going to suck for you, but I need you as a vessel.
Ooh,
And yeah, I need you as this vessel. So I need you to have this experience so that you can share it with other people and help other people. But I couldn't see it. And I spent my whole life putting oxygen masks on the other people while I was asphyxiating myself. And I'm like, whoa, with grief. And I'm like, okay, this is not what it's supposed to be. But now I see it. I see it clearly now. But my faith is always my faith. I believe in God. I believe in the universe. And I believe in purpose. And I believe that what happened for a reason. My mother dying was ordained and it was supposed to happen. While it hurts, that hurt helps others because I get to tell this story now.
But you just be like, God, why me?
Why me? Why'd you pick me?
Why do
And
you
guess
pick
what?
me?
Why not?
Yeah.
Why not? I mean, I had a lot of faith. My mother was a preacher. My mother was a evangelizing preacher, preached about healing, faith, faith the size of a mustard seed, all of it. And then she died. And I was like, God, is this a joke? It's not a joke. It was designed. It's hard. It's hard to accept that,
I got to the point where I don't even ask why anymore.
I don't.
Just ask for strength.
I accept the assignment.
I accept the assignment that here I am, and I just ask for strength. God, I don't know where I'm going.
Right.
And now I'm spending my nights learning how to edit videos. I'm like, okay, God, now what? And when he put something else on me, I'm like, okay, God.
Right.
I'm following you. People might think I'm crazy, but people thought Noah was crazy. So.
Yeah, there you go. That part.
And this next question I came up with because I'm a Mary J. Blige fan, and she had this series where she had a picture of her hugging her younger self. And so it said, what would 50-year-old Tonya say to 25-year-old Tonya or 18-year-old Tonya? Whether it's words of comfort,
right.
words of encouragement, because even a friend of mine, when I wrote the book, someone inboxed me and said, I have 7 sisters, but I'm so lonely. And she couldn't explain that. And so in grief, sometimes you feel like, when I wrote that book, it made me realize all the responses I got that I don't own the patent on grief, but grief makes you feel so alone and so hurt. It's like no one else in the world could possibly feel this pain. So what would you tell your younger self to get you through that walk through the ICU that day?
Yeah. Well, here's the first thing is acknowledging 25-year-old Tonya was a hot mess, first of all. God, I tell you, by the grace of God, I can sit here and even talk to you. 25-year-old Tonya was a hot mess. But anyway, that's not the question. I would tell Tonya to slow down, feel the pain, feel the grief. Observe the feeling, but don't get stuck in it. I read a lot of Wayne Dyer, and one of the things I learned from him is that our feelings are our feelings, and we're an observer of the experiences, right? And feelings are sensations that will pass. They don't stay forever. Now, they may circle back around, but in the moment, even that moment of sadness I felt 10, 15 minutes ago, it's past. So be an observer of it. Observe it. Don't get stuck in it. Let it pass. And then the other thing is, you got this, and you are not pain and you are not grief. You are not those things. You are experiencing them, but you are not pain and you are not grief. Because I felt that I was pain and grief, so I was passing on pain and grief to others. Believe me, that 25-year-old Tonya, because I was pain and I was grief, so I passed it on.
In those relationships.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Grief shows up as many different emotions. Sadness, anxiety, frustration, etc. What emotion can't you seem to shake?
You know what? I'm still working on this one, but the one that plagues me every now and then is anxiety. And the anxiety is more around my own mortality.
Yes.
Because my mother died at 46. When I hit 46, I didn't throw a big party, but I should have. But that was this moment for me of
exhaling.
Okay, I made 46. So I'm always preoccupied with health, which is good. You should be preoccupied with health, but not in a way that makes you anxious. So there are some moments that anxiety will creep up and tell me that, hey, you're going to die. You're going to die. You're going to die. Your mom died at 46. Maybe you'll get to 52, which is coming up in May. Maybe you won't. So that's the thing that continues to creep up on me, is a little bit of anxiety.
Mm.
But I've stopped medicating for it, so I won't drink when I'm feeling anxious. I used to do that. So I've had to reevaluate my entire relationship with alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
which is why I can continue to go a month at a time without drinking. By the way, it's dry January for me, so that's why you see this Essentia bottle.
Yeah, yeah, I did. You know, for me,
It's okay.
it's normally a dry January for me, but
I get
I
it.
had to, when God told me to do the soul sessions. I was like, really, dude? That's how I learned to talk to him. Like, really, dude?
Hmm.
And I needed to get into a space
Right.
because every person I picked has different questions.
Hmm.
And so I needed to get into a space where I could focus.
Yeah.
And so I guess I did my dry December. I did from the 1st to the 21st. I fasted.
Oh, good.
And I read a lot of scriptures.
Okay.
Um, I read my book again. I read a lot about grief, and I watched my friends. They didn't know. You guys didn't know, but I watched you for 3 weeks, and I observed you, and I kind of formed the questions around that. So
Mm.
that was my dry 3 weeks,
Got it.
and yeah. So normally I probably do it again. And I learned that, and what I learned about do another mutual friend of ours, Amina, is that who's been an amazing spiritual blessing in my life. That you don't need. I used to be like, oh God, here come Daniel. Right. She was
Mm-mm.
like, whenever you need to go through something and you need to talk to God, you
Right.
can fast. It doesn't have to be the 1st of January.
It sure doesn't.
So that's why, I just took that time in December, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna get into this. That's why I think that um, there's so many emotions around it. Like I felt,
Hmm.
I interjected myself into like uh, the movie Ghost, where he goes
Hmm.
into everybody's body. So I was
Right.
trying to feel what everyone is feeling, and I wanted genuine conversations to convey to somebody else, because so many people talked about how this has blessed them. I'm like, man, they don't know how much I have to put into this.
Right. You're the
Next
vessel.
question.
Remember, you're the
Yeah,
vessel.
that's what I keep
You're
telling
on
myself.
assignment.
This is my assignment.
You're on assignment.
I'm on assignment. You are a mother figure to everyone. Everyone looks up to you for a lot of things. That has to be heavy at times.
Hmm.
How was the transformation from daughter to mother figure before you even had your own kids?
Hmm. Yeah.
And I'm
So
saying that from personal experience.
yeah, no, no, I know. And yes, I've been thrown into it, whether it's mothering my sister who's
Yeah.
younger than me, mothering an older sister, mothering my nieces. I've always admired my mother, and I'm so much like her. So I think in terms of how I was thrown into it, I just naturally morphed into this mother figure. And I think what I believe is, I suppose that I was giving, or I'm giving what I need, and
Hmm.
that's what I've arrived at, is that what I've been giving to the folks that I've mothered or mentored, because I believe in, to me, mother and mentorship is all similar. So, and I do a lot of mentoring at work and outside of work, but I give it because it's also what I need, and somehow there's this
Mm.
reward for me in it when I'm able to give. It's how I honor my mother also, because she was such a giving woman and a giving soul, that this is one of the ways I honor her. And this is how one of my therapists helped me see this, because in one of my therapy sessions, I said, yeah, I still struggle. She said, your mother would not want you to have a life filled with struggle. That is
Hmm.
not how you honor her. That is not how you honor her memory or honor her legacy. So for me, it's always been about not being exactly like her, but I know I'm so much like her. But this is a way that I get to honor her by just taking the good parts. But it is heavy, to your
Mm.
point. It's very heavy, and sometimes it gets very weighty, and it can be a little bit too much.
So that goes into my next question. What does self-care look like for Tonya Walley?
Yeah, and I haven't always practiced self-care, and I say there's different buckets of self-care for me now. There are those tangible buckets of self-care like the spa,
Mm-hmm.
reading the book,
Mm-hmm.
going on a vacation. That's very
Mm-hmm.
tangible. And then when I think about the things that are not so tangible, I think about boundaries because
Ooh.
that's self-care. Yes.
Yes.
That is probably my biggest
That's better than a day at the
self-care. That's
spa.
better than a spa is having healthy boundaries in place
Yes.
and finally having the ability to say no.
Mm.
Those are my two
No,
big
it's
ones is
self-care.
boundaries and no is self-care because if you're always saying yes and saying yes and saying yes, you get empty and you can't pour
Mm.
from an empty cup.
That's
You
the
can't.
same thing. I
Because how do
love
you
my friend.
replenish
That's the
yourself if you're
same thing
just
Tamisha
continuing to
said.
say
You
yes to
cannot pour from
everything?
an empty cup.
You just can't. And maybe it sounds cliche as to some people, but it is so true because I've been empty and then people will still say, I need more of you. And I'm like, I don't have it. I got nothing. And it doesn't even have to be money. It could be money, time, advice. I just have nothing because I've not replenished myself. So again, that goes in these two buckets of here's those tangible things that I'm going to do, like spa days and
Sometimes money
vacations.
is easier to give than yourself.
Oh, talk about it.
I'd
Tina
rather
Tina
hear.
says it all the time. She said, "Oh, you just like to throw money at a problem instead of deal with it." I said, "Yep, sometimes because it's easier."
Sometimes money is easier
But
to
the problem
give.
doesn't go away though. That's the problem with that.
Oh my God.
Oh
Yeah,
my god.
because you can make money again, right?
That's right.
You can make the money back, but you can't get parts of yourself back that you just given away to somebody and they haven't used you correctly.
Right. Right.
So
Absolutely.
you just putting yourself out there to get used and abused, and you have to replenish yourself. Like no one, I always say, no one's coming to save you, unless you're blessed enough like us to have a group of friends and to just pick up the phone and say, "What you? Nah, I'm just
Yeah.
And I can tell
Exactly.
like when someone texts me randomly or Jesus run them across my mind, let me pick up the phone and call. It's
Right.
like you do me. Hey, what's going on? Like, let's
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah.
I was just you just on my mind. Well,
Good.
I'm appreciative, and I'm thankful that God has placed so many amazing people in my life, and I don't mean to. There's I border between humble humility
Mhm.
and gratefulness of the village to
Yes.
flaunting it and saying, "Look what I got."
Right.
Get you some of these people.
Get you some. Yes.
Get you. Y'all better get y'all some of these people. When my mother and father died so close together, there
Mhm.
wasn't time for our relationship to change. And so I know you lost your dad recently.
Mhm.
And so in that time frame of losing your mom, how did losing your mom, I'm not sure when you came out or whatever, how did losing your mom change your relationship with your dad? PK.
Yeah, yeah. So my relationship with my dad is interesting. I always say this, and I admit it, and my sisters, because I'm sure they'll look at this. They know I was a mama's girl. I love my
Mm,
dad. There's so much that I got from him. Again, my work ethic. I, like my dad, am a provider.
mm,
So I definitely got those things from him. But I struggled in this grief, in this space of grief and pain, and I even struggled, and because I believe in transparency and being candid at some points I also questioned God, like, why did you take my mother, not him? Not that I didn't love him, but because my love for her was so deep, I was like, whoa, you why how'd you make this choice?
right.
And it wasn't because he was a bad father. He was there. But it was just that I had this relationship with her that just ran so deep. And
Mm.
because he was a provider, because he was the dad, he wasn't a girl dad for me anyway. He might have been for my sisters, and that's okay. I'm not taking that from them.
Are
So
you
it
the
was,
oldest?
beg your pardon?
Are you the oldest?
No, I'm second from the youngest.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I think for me, I wanted her, my mother, and I was a little bit on the fence with my dad, but our relationship, it did get stronger over the years because
Hmm.
what I saw, what I see now, and I didn't see this until he died, by the way. I felt this incredible amount of sadness for my dad because I said, now that I'm married, I said, God, what would it feel like to lose your person?
Mm.
And when she died, my dad just, he kept going. He didn't miss a beat. He took care of us to the best of his ability.
Right.
And there's this sadness. I said, Tonya, you could have even been a better daughter because maybe you could have understood your dad. My dad wasn't very emotional. He,
Hmm.
he's a dad. Not that some dads are not, but he just wasn't emotional. But he was dad. He took care of us.
He's a
But
provider.
he's
He's
a
a provider. You
provider.
got time for that, and that's what
Yeah,
honestly, to be transparent, my wife was probably gonna kill me, but that's what we going through right now. Like she's more of on the emotional side,
right,
and I'm like, hon, I can't deal with that. I gotta work
right,
and provide. Not that
right,
she doesn't, but that's my role. I was just the vessel for Jax.
right.
When he needs comforting, when he needs help, he goes to my wife.
Mm-hmm.
She's the comforter, and I'm the provider. And
Right.
when you're a provider, I think that it's like going out into battle into the world every day, and you have to deal with things. So you have this shield you have to put on, and sometimes when you come home, it doesn't come down,
That's right. That's right.
which I
That's
need
right.
to work on.
Me too, by the way. So do I, because I I go out into battle and I come home thinking I'm still in the
Yeah,
offices
it's
over
still in
there. I'm like,
battle.
calm down.
You're
This
like,
is
it's
not that
me,
office.
your
It's
wife.
me. Yeah. But my dad was a great dad. I over the years, we got closer. Not that we weren't close, but I moved out shortly after my mom died. I'm like, yeah, I'm out of here. I don't know what you all. I don't know what you all. I don't know what you Christian folks are doing, but I'm out here. I'm going out into the wild. But he was a great dad. He really was, and I miss him. I do miss him, and
That's yeah.
yeah. But I grieve for him and for his grief that I never knew about, and that sometimes brings me sadness also because I couldn't only imagine. He and my mom had been together for 20 plus years at this time, and they got
Wow.
together very young. And I could only imagine what he went through. And if he were here, I would hug him and say, Dad, I'm sorry for your loss also. And I never
Ooh,
said that to him.
that's deep. That's so empathetic of you to in your time of grief to worry about someone else's
Yeah,
grief.
yeah.
And that's how I felt when my brother died. When I mean I went down for like it was like on the seventh day you had to get up, but I went down for a couple of days, and then on the third day I was like, let me call his friends,
Yeah,
like his riders, to make sure I'm like, y'all good, everybody up, and everyone was just surprised to get calls from me because you can't feel what I'm gonna feel, but I can at least make sure you okay.
that's right.
Because everybody, and that's what people don't understand about grief. We can grow up in this thing. You and your sisters. If I talk to your sisters, even though you guys had the same
Hmm.
loss, your mom, everyone will have a different version.
Absolutely.
Everyone will have a different story, and that's what I want everybody to understand. That's the purpose of these conversations. Is that um, a lot of people think they're alone in sometimes the way they feel, or there's a perspective that they don't know is possible where that can help them cope. And that's just all I want to do. I was starting to see Facebook and social media become so, it was becoming dark
Hmm.
and a sad place with people pretending.
Yeah, that's
There,
right.
there was a lot of people pretending, and I felt like I was the only real person in the room. And I get
Hmm.
up there and say I'm having this horrible day, and everybody seems like they ride unicorns to work,
Yeah.
and it wasn't fun anymore.
No, I hear you because I'm like, well, how can you help other people if you hide behind a mask
Yeah, and
and
then I
and you
was
don't want
getting
to be
these
authentic?
right, and I was in these private spaces, like we vacation together, and when we have these private space, or when we have brunch, and it's just like, for example, when we have brunch on the rooftop, and we're like overlooking the ocean, and we're having these mimosas, and we're just having like amazing conversations and laughing and talking. And I'm like, the people that I see on Facebook, I know y'all not with genuine people having these genuine times, and that's why a lot of times I feel torn. Like, should I share this part of my life, or I want to keep it to myself? But a lot of times I want, and then when we beach house with our friends, and my son, he had a dream. I feel like I'm rambling, but Jax had a dream the other day, and when he dreamed, he said that he had a dream that he got married. And when he mentioned everyone that was at the wedding, it's people that's been in his life.
Right.
Like consistency. And that's what I love about friendships, and that's what I want to do with this podcast, is just create safe spaces for conversations that can help other people.
Right. That's right. And you're doing it.
So I hope
you're
that
a vessel.
I hope. I didn't know you was dry. I wouldn't have been drinking.
No, it's okay. It's not. You know what? I'm so good with alcohol now.
You know, my struggle was the first round. We were doing it for 5 years. My first 2 years, it wasn't alcohol; it was food.
Yes.
And that year, that 2015, is when I lost the most weight. It's because when the doctors told me it was impossible to have a kid at 40, black and overweight. And God showed them otherwise. He didn't just give us a regular kid. He gave us this. I can't even describe it. And I don't struggle with food anymore. But now my thing is alcohol. So that last 21 days was like.
Well, here's the thing. Vice is coming in all forms, right? You got alcohol, you got food, you got sex, you got drugs, you name it. So the struggle or the goal here is to not transfer it from one to the other, for me anyway. So that's the goal.
And I've learned just like I guess like grief. I've learned moderation is a good word for me, because I definitely used to overdo it.
Right.
I used to be so sad where I would drink to a point where I'm thinking I'm numbing the pain, and it just made me sadder. So I guess that was God taking it away, because I'm saying, I'm so sad, let me drink more. And I would get sad. And it was like a vicious cycle. I'm sad, I'm going to drink more. Get sadder, drink more. Get sadder, drink more. And so now it's just like, I have a random cocktail. I'm good with food, and I'm good with alcohol.
Yeah. Listen, I get it. I can think back to some of my days drinking, thinking about, how did this car get parked here?
Yeah.
Like, you know, we all have that, or many of us have that moment where we can look back and say, I should be dead.
I should be dead. Yeah. And I was just saying to myself, I was feeling a bit stretched this morning. And I was thinking about The Wolf of Wall Street, where the scene in the movie where he had the Quaaludes and he drove the car. And I was like, oh, it's retrograde. Let's blame this all on retrograde. Me and Jax, I'm like, you're arguing with a 7-year-old.
Oh, my God.
And I'm disagreeing with my wife about this. I'm like, wait, something's off here. And I think about it, I'm like, Jesus, line me up, because I got stuff to do. And she come down here and fix my microphone, though. She got to add jet, honey, I'm telling. Yeah, she we got to fix this one. I'm like, I know we're speaking now. Right.
That's funny.
So, and that's real.
Yes.
Right. Yes. So for 20 years, every day isn't, like Mary said, it ain't all roses.
It's not all roses.
But
people just got to be real and say it. Because people need to know where. Anyway, we could go on and on and on.
We could go on and on.
We're going to pick this up on another one.
Yeah, we're going to pick this up privately. So
yes.
I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time and blessing the people with your story. And I pray that this conversation, as God put on my heart, to help heal and encourage someone. And that's it.
I love you.
Thank you, AP. I love you so much.
I love you too.
Have a good night.
You too.
All right.